The Assembly will come to order. The Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Assemblywoman Anderson, Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson, Assemblywoman Bilbra Axelrod, Assemblywoman Black, Assemblywoman Brown May, Assemblywoman Carlton, Assemblywoman Cohen, Assemblywoman Considine, Assemblywoman Dickman, Assemblywoman Duran, Assemblyman Ellison, Assemblyman Flores, Assemblywoman Gonzalez, Assemblywoman Gorlo, Assemblyman Hafen, Assemblywoman Hanson, Assemblywoman Hardy, Assemblywoman Howdiggy, Assemblywoman Kasama, Assemblywoman Krasner, Assemblyman Levitt, Assemblywoman Martinez, Assemblywoman Marzola, Assemblyman Matthews, Assemblyman MacArthur, Assemblywoman Brittany Miller, Assemblyman C.H. Miller, Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno, Assemblywoman Wynn, Assemblyman O'Neill, Assemblyman Ortlecker, Assemblywoman Peters, Assemblyman Roberts, Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong, Assemblywoman Thomas, Assemblywoman Titus, Assemblywoman Tolles, Assemblywoman Torres, Assemblyman Watts, Assemblyman Wheeler, Assemblyman Yeager, Speaker Frierson.
Here, Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May the record reflect that all members are present.
The record shall so reflect. There are 42 members present. There is a quorum. The Assembly will please rise for the prayer by Rabbi Benjamin Zober, the Temple Sinai in Reno.
Adonai Sivtayv Tivtach, Ufi Agid Tehiratecha. Eternal God, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. May the work within these sacred walls be worthy of the one who came before us, who gave bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance. May it blaze a path of an end to hardship and bloodshed. May it stand as a sentry, guaranteeing all the self-same liberties as we would enjoy. And may it help bring about an age abundant in the most precious gift, that of peace, and a world of peace. Oseh shalom bimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol am Yisrael v'amru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us all, to which we say, Amen.
Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order of Business 2, reading and approval of the journal.
Carson City.
Mr. Speaker.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to dispense with further reading of the journal and authorize the Speaker and Chief Clerk to make necessary corrections or additions.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Go to Order of Business 4, reports to standing committees.
Mr. Speaker, Committee on Education, to which will refer to Assembly Bills 88, 167, 215, has had the submitter consideration of executive report the same back with recommendation amended due passed amended. Shannon Bilber Axelrod, Chair. Mr. Speaker, Committee on Growth and Infrastructure, to which was referred to Assembly Bill 188, has had the submitter consideration of executive report the same back with recommendation amended due passed amended. Danielle Monroe Moreno, Chair. Mr. Speaker, Committee on Health and Human Services, to which will refer to Assembly Bills 197, 205, has had the submitter consideration of executive report the same back with recommendation amended due passed amended. And your Committee on Health and Human Services, to which was referred Assembly Bill 228, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with recommendation amended, due passed amended. Rochelle T. Wynn, Chair. Mr. Speaker, Committee on Natural Resources, to which was referred Assembly Bill 71, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with recommendation amended, due passed amended. Howard Watts, Chair.
Go to Order of Business 7, messages from the Senate.
Senate Chamber, Carson City, April 13, 2021. To the Honorable the Assembly. I have the honor to inform your Honorable Body that the Senate on this day passed Senate Bills 84, 237, 311, 352, 357, 358, 364, 368, 372, 398, 400, 404, Senate Joint Resolution 7, Senate Concurrent Resolution 8, Assembly Bill 62. And I have the honor to inform your Honorable Body that the Senate on this day passed as amended Senate Bills 43, 45, 49, 123, 193. Sherry Rodriguez, Assistant Secretary of the Senate.
We'll now go to Order of Business 8, motions, resolutions, and notices.
Senate Joint Resolution 7, introduced by Senator Don Darrow Loop, Assemblyman Roberts, proposing to amend the Nevada Constitution to remove the constitutional provisions governing the election and duties of the Board of Regents of the State University and to authorize the legislature to provide by statute for the governance of the State University and for the auditing of public institutions of higher education in the state. Resolved that this resolution becomes effective upon passage. End of resolution.
We're going to refer this one? Is there a referral there? Oh, it's not referral? It's a read and refer, so I need a referral for SJR 7. Assemblywoman Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Senate Joint Resolution 7 be referred to your Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections.
Without objection, so referred.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 8, introduced by the Committee on Growth and Infrastructure, expressing support for the identification of key transportation priorities for the Lake Tahoe Basin.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 8 be referred to your Committee on Growth and Infrastructure.
Without objection, so referred.
Notice of exemption, April 7, 2021. The Fiscal Analysis Division, pursuant to Joint Standing Rule 14.6, has determined the eligibility for exemption of Senate Bills 165, 175, 184, 194, 200, 201, 205, 211, 212, 219, 222, 227, 230, 231, 236, 267, 280, 287, 290, 292, 302, 308, 310, 332, 340, 346, 348, 352, 352, 354, 356, 365, 389, and 401. Wayne Thorley, Fiscal Analysis Division.
Order Business 9, introduction, first reading, and reference of bills.
Senate Bill 43, introduced by the Committee on Natural Resources, enacting to outdoor recreation, increasing the membership of the Advisory Board on Outdoor Recreation and providing other matters properly named thereto. Senate Bill 45, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs, enacting crimes, changing the name and duties of the Ombudsman for domestic violence, changing the duties and composition of the Committee on Domestic Violence, revising the penalty for a battery which constitutes domestic violence against a pregnant person, and providing other matters properly named thereto. Senate Bill 49, introduced by the Committee on Health and Human Services, enacting cannabis, authorizing the Cannabis Compliance Board to employ the services of persons the board considers necessary for the purpose of hearing disciplinary proceedings, authorizing the executive director of the board to serve a complaint on a respondent who is subject to a disciplinary proceeding, authorizing the chair of the board to grant one or more extensions to certain deadlines for holding a hearing, removing authorization for the board to take testimony by deposition in hearings before the board, revising provisions governing a regulatory waiver to the registration requirement for holders of an ownership interest of less than 5% in a cannabis establishment, changing the labeling requirements for cannabis products, and providing other matters properly named thereto. Senate Bill 84, introduced by the Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections, enacting to election precincts, changing the maximum number of active registered voters that may be included within an election precinct, and providing other matters properly named thereto. Senate Bill 123, introduced by Senator Spearman, enacting to aging persons, revising qualifications relating to the membership of the Nevada Silver Haired Legislative Forum, and providing other matters properly named thereto. Senate Bill 193, introduced by the Committee on Education, enacting to education, requiring the Board of Regents of the University of Nevada to prepare a report concerning students or veterans, creating a preference in admission to certain programs for certain veterans, prohibiting an assessment of a tuition charge against certain veteran spouses and dependents, and providing other matters properly named thereto. Senate Bill 237, introduced by the Senators Harris and Scheibel, enacting to businesses, revising provisions relating to policies, programs, and procedures intended to encourage and promote certain business enterprises, to require such programs to include LGBTQ-owned businesses, and providing other matters properly named thereto. Senate Bill 311, introduced by Senator Ratty, enacting to housing, authorizing the Nevada Rural Housing Authority to create for-profit business entity for the purpose of developing, operating, and managing housing projects to provide dwellings primarily for persons of low and moderate income, exempting such a business entity from compliance with the open meeting law, and providing other matters properly named thereto. Senate Bill 352, introduced by the Committee on Education, enacting to education, requiring the Commission on Professional Standards in Education to adopt regulations related to paraprofessionals and to student teaching, and providing other matters properly named thereto. Senate Bill 357, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary by request, enacting to Department of Corrections, requiring the Department to track and report expenses that are directly related to housing youthful offenders, and providing the matters properly named thereto. Senate Bill 358, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to crimes, revising provisions relating to the interception of certain wire communications and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Senate Bill 364, introduced by Senator Scheibel, an act relating to health care, requiring certain medical facilities to provide training relating to caring for victims of sexual assault and attempted sexual assault to employees who provide such care, requiring such facilities to provide emergency contraception to such victims upon request and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Senate Bill 368, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs, an act relating to the Lake Tahoe Basin, requiring the issuance of general obligation bonds to carry out certain environmental improvement projects included in the second phase of the Environmental Improvement Program for the Lake Tahoe Basin and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Senate Bill 372, introduced by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act relating to fire, revising reporting requirements relating to the treatment of persons who sustain burn injuries, revising provisions relating to the investigation of those reports and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Senate Bill 398, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to juvenile justice, requiring the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission to submit a report containing certain information to the Legislative Committee on Child Welfare and Juvenile Justice and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Senate Bill 400, introduced by the Committee on Finance, an act relating to consumer protection, revising the penalties for certain unlawful acts relating to weights and measures, public weighing, petroleum products, and advertisements of motor vehicle fuel, and petroleum products, requiring the state sealer of consumer equitability to adopt certain regulations establishing procedures for an administrative hearing in certain circumstances, providing penalties, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Senate Bill 404, introduced by the Committee on Finance, an act relating to cannabis, authorizing the state sealer of consumer equitability to adopt and enforce regulations relating to cannabis weighing and measuring equipment, requiring the state sealer of consumer equitability to ensure cannabis weighing and measuring equipment are suitable for their intended use, properly installed, accurate, and maintained by their owner or user, requiring the state sealer of consumer equitability to inspect and test cannabis weighing and measuring equipment, authorizing the state sealer of consumer equitability to establish an annual fee for all cannabis weighing and measuring equipment, prohibiting a person from having or in his or her possession or selling or offering to sell an incorrect weight or measure for use in a cannabis establishment, providing a penalty and providing other matters properly relating thereto.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that all the Senate bills as shown on the board and on Senate bill introductions dated April 14, 2021, of which all members have a copy of on their desk, be referred to the committees as shown.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll go back to order business 8.
Assembly Joint Resolution Number 2, introduced by the Committee on Natural Resources, recognizing that the health of forests, rangelands, and soils are inextricably linked, and the quality of water. Resolved that this resolution becomes effective upon passage. End of resolution.
Are there any amendments to the resolution?
There are none.
Remarks? Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Joint Resolution 2 expresses the legislature's support for various governmental entities to work collaboratively with land managers, land users, private landowners, water purveyors, and other stakeholders to identify watersheds that can be improved by better forest, rangeland, and soil health managers, and to identify or establish voluntary programs to address the health of forests, rangelands, and soils. This resolution is effective upon passage.
Any further remarks? Seeing none, Chief Clerk, open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 34 ayes, 8 nays. The resolution, having received the constitutional majority, declared passed. The resolution is ordered, transmitted to the Senate. Now we'll go to order business 11, second reading and amendments.
Assembly Bill 8, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to gaming, revising certain definitions relating to gaming, requiring additional persons to register with the Nevada Gaming Control Board, revising provisions governing entry fees for contests and tournaments, and compensation for online interactive gaming, and the calculation of the monthly gaming license fee based on the gross revenue of the license holder, exempting certain officers and employees of the board from the provisions governing the state personnel system, authorizing the Nevada Gaming Commission to adopt regulations governing the use of electronic signatures for credit instruments, revising provisions governing certain fees collected upon the conclusion of a gaming operation and providing otherwise properly in thereto, the people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 9, end of Section 9, end of bill.
Are there any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have amendment number 136, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 136 to Assembly Bill 8.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 136 to Assembly Bill 8. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment revises the definition of gross revenue in Section 3 of the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 136 to Assembly Bill 8 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendments adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 30, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to crimes, revising provisions governing eligibility for a grant from the account for aid for victims of domestic violence and renaming the account and providing otherwise properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 5, end of Section 5, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 74, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 74 to Assembly Bill 30.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 74 to Assembly Bill 30. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 74 does the following. 1, it revises the name of the account for aid for victims of domestic violence to include sexual violence. 2, it revises the services and programs provided to victims of domestic violence and their family members. And 3, it revises the procedure for the awarding of certain grants.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 74 to Assembly Bill 30 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendments adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 33, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to the protection of children, authorizing the paternity of a child to be legally established during a proceeding concerning the protection of the child, and providing otherwise properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 15, end of Section 15, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 76, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 76 to Assembly Bill 33.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 76 to Assembly Bill 33. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment does 4 things. Number 1, it deletes sections 1 through 11 and 13 through 15 of the bill. Number 2, it amends Section 12 of the bill by adding a reference to NRS Chapter 432B. 3, it adds a new section allowing a district court's jurisdiction over a Chapter 432B proceeding. And lastly, it provides that a judgment or order issued pursuant to the proceeding is excluded from certain confidentiality provisions and is considered a final order.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 76 to Assembly Bill 33 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendments adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 37, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to the support of children, defining certain terms and revising certain definitions relating to the support of children, requiring the reporting and withholding of lump sum payments by income payers under certain circumstances, revising provisions relating to the amount of income that may be withheld from an obligor, making various changes relating to the withholding of income by income payers, authorizing the imposition of certain penalties on income payers who commit certain improper acts relating to lump sum payments expressly, authorizing the assignment of money from certain lump sum payments, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 27, end of Section 27, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 77, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 77 to Assembly Bill 37.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 77 to Assembly Bill 37. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 77 does 2 things. First, it revises the definition of income payer, and number 2, it removes the reference to workers' compensation reimbursements and insurance settlements included in the definition of lump sum payment.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 77 to Assembly Bill 37 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendments adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 43, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to the judiciary, requiring the Nevada judges of limited jurisdiction to advise the Nevada Supreme Court on the appointment of certain members of the Commission on Judicial Discipline in certain circumstances, creating 2 panels for investigation and adjudication of a complaint against a judge, revising provisions relating to the standard of proof for a hearing before the Commission, removing the requirement that a judge must respond to a complaint, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 8, end of Section 8, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 153, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 153 to Assembly Bill 43.
Assemblyman Yeager moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 153 to Assembly Bill 43. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 153 deletes the bill in its entirety and instead replaces it with a new section requesting the Nevada Supreme Court to study and make recommendations concerning the Commission on Judicial Discipline.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 153 to Assembly Bill 43 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 51, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to contractors revising provisions governing the eligibility of an injured person to recover damages from the recovery fund administered by the State Contractors Board, limiting the rights which are assigned to the board by an injured person who recovers satisfaction of a judgment from the recovery fund, increasing the amount of that administrative fine which the board may impose against a residential contractor for failing to notify an owner of certain rights relating to the recovery fund, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 8, end of Section 8, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have Amendment 30, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Assemblyman Howdy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Amendment 30 to Assembly Bill 51 be accepted.
Assemblyman Howdy has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 30 to Assembly Bill 51. Remarks?
The amendment provides that a detached standalone dwelling, as described in Section 1 of the bill, need only to serve as a residence for its owner rather than intended for habitation by one family union, to fall within the definition of a single-family residence. It also amends Section 1B of Section 1 of the bill to include townhome or a duplex within the definition of a single-family residence, and removes subsection 2B of Section 1 of the bill and adds a mobile or manufactured home within the exclusions provided for in subsection 3 of Section 1.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 30 to Assembly Bill 51 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 52, introduced by the Committee on Natural Resources, an act relating to public lands, revising the membership and duties of the Land Use Planning Advisory Council, authorizing the removal of a voting member before the expiration of his or her term under certain circumstances, requiring the election of a vice chair of the Advisory Council, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have Amendment 171, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs.
Assemblyman Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 171 to Assembly Bill 52.
Assemblyman Flores moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 171 to Assembly Bill 52. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment provides that the members appointed to the Nevada Indian Commission is a voting member of the Land Use Planning Advisory Council.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 171 to Assembly Bill 52 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 59, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to tobacco, increasing the minimum age to purchase tobacco products, revising the punishment for certain prohibited acts relating to the sale of tobacco products, revising certain definitions relating to tobacco products for the purposes of the regulation and taxation of tobacco products, eliminating certain duplicative requirements concerning the sale of cigarettes, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 10, end of Section 10, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have Amendment 140, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 140 to Assembly Bill 59.
Assemblyman Yeager moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 140 to Assembly Bill 59. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 140 clarifies that the product is being sold to an ultimate consumer in the state. It revises provisions to include the term vapor products. It clarifies the identification requirements the seller or distributor must obtain from the consumer. It adds that every person selling tobacco products must certify yearly to the Attorney General that it uses an independent third-party age verification system. It establishes penalties, and it repeals the Category C felony for noncompliance.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 140 to Assembly Bill 59 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 68, introduced by the Committee on Education, an act relating to education, increasing the period within which a meeting must be held by the State Public Charter School Authority to consider an application to form a charter school, exempting certain charter schools from certain performance frameworks, authorizing the sponsor of a charter school to eliminate certain grade levels and campuses in a charter school in certain circumstances, revising provisions relating to the performance of a charter school, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 6, end of Section 6, end of bill.
All right, amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have Amendment 41, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Education.
Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 41 to Assembly Bill 68.
Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 41 to Assembly Bill 68. Remarks?
Amendment 41 replaces grade level with elementary, middle, and high schools in Section 4 and Section 5 of the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 41 of Assembly Bill 68 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 69, introduced by the Committee on Revenue, an act relating to economic development, revising provisions relating to the membership of the Board of Economic Development, revising provisions governing the appointment of the Executive Director of the Office of Economic Development within the Office of the Governor, renaming and revising provisions relating to the Division of Motion Pictures within the Office of Economic Development, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 9, end of Section 9, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 111, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Revenue.
Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 111 to Assembly Bill 69.
Assemblywoman Cohen has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 111 to Assembly Bill 69. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment number 111 to Assembly Bill 69 clarifies that the affirmative vote of a majority of all voting members of the Board of Economic Development is required to exercise any power conferred on the board rather than only a majority of the voting members that are present.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 111 to Assembly Bill 69 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 104, introduced by Assemblyman Yeager, an act relating to actions concerning persons exempting certain records concerning a civil action for wrongful conviction from the requirement to be sealed, exempting the state from provisions governing offers of judgment in an action for wrongful conviction, exempting a judgment for wrongful conviction from interest on certain judgments, clarifying the period of time used to calculate the amount of a judgment for wrongful conviction, limiting the amount of monetary compensation which may be awarded to a person who has previously obtained an award of monetary compensation or a settlement from this state or other governmental entity, requiring the person who previously received compensation for a wrongful conviction and who subsequently obtains an award of monetary compensation or a settlement from the state for the wrongful conviction to reimburse the state for the amount previously obtained, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 5, end of Section 5, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 103, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 103 to Assembly Bill 104.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved the Assembly adopt Amendment 103 to Assembly Bill 104. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment clarifies the cost for which a claimant can be reimbursed. It establishes limits to provide a maximum potential cost for additional expenses. It requires the claimant to inform the state within 4 months of any other award of damages or settlement so the state can enact the offset provision. It clarifies that the calculation of an award or settlement must not include attorney's fees and costs awarded in previous or subsequent civil action. And finally, it adds a new section requiring the approval of the State Board of Examiners before payment becomes effective.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 103 to Assembly Bill 104 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 113, introduced by Assemblyman Hardy et al., Senators Buck et al., an act relating to criminal procedure, providing that there is no limitation of time within which a criminal prosecution for sex trafficking must be commenced, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 6, end of Section 6, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 207, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 207 to Assembly Bill 113.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 207 to Assembly Bill 113. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 207 increases the statute of limitations to 6 years for the criminal prosecution of sex trafficking, and the amendment also adds co-sponsors to the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 207 to Assembly Bill 113 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 125, introduced by Assemblyman Duran et al., an act relating to offenders, allowing certain offenders convicted of Category B felonies to have credits deducted from the minimum term or minimum aggregate term imposed by a sentence, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 141, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 141 to Assembly Bill 125.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 141 to Assembly Bill 125. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 141 provides that the bill applies to offenders who committed an offense after July 1st, 2007 and have not been convicted of certain offenses, and the amendment also eliminates certain offenses from receiving credit.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 141 to Assembly Bill 125 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 130, introduced by Assemblyman Flores et al., Senator Daniele, an act relating to insurance supervising and requiring insurance companies to offer an option of covering certain medical expenses and policies that cover motorcycles, requiring the amount paid by an insurance company for the coverage of certain medical expenses resulting from the crash of a passenger car or motorcycle to be based on the usual and customary charges for the locality where the medical expenses were incurred, clarifying that certain provisions for the reduction in the premium paid for a motor vehicle insurance policy do not apply to motorcycles, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 31, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Assemblywoman Hodeggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Amendment 31 to Assembly Bill 130.
Assemblywoman Hodeggy has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 31 to Assembly Bill 130. Remarks?
Amendment 31 deletes the requirement that the amount paid by the insurance company for reasonable and necessary medical expenses under optional coverage for the payment of reasonable and necessary medical expenses be based on the usual and customary charges for the locality where the medical expenses were incurred. It also deletes the definitions of healthcare services, provider of health case, and usual and customary changes. It also requires an insurance company transacting motor vehicle insurance in Nevada to offer uninsured and underinsured coverage in the amount equal to the limits of coverage for bodily injury.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 31 to Assembly Bill 130 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 131, introduced by Assemblyman Flores et al., Senator Daniele, an act relating to peace officers, revising provisions requiring certain peace officers to wear a portable event recording device under certain circumstances and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, end of bill.
Are any of the amendments to the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 143, introduced by Assemblywomen Krasner et al., Senator Spearman and Settlemeyer, an act relating to human trafficking, requiring the Department of Health and Human Services to develop a statewide plan for the delivery of services to victims of human trafficking and to form a statewide task force to assist the department and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Are any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 253, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs.
Assemblyman Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 253 to Assembly Bill 143.
Assemblyman Flores has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 253 to Assembly Bill 143. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment places a program in the Division of Child and Family Services, designates a human trafficking specialist within the Victims of Crime program, ensures an online directory of services for victims of human trafficking is publicly accessible, requires that the coalition provide assistance to maximize resources to local human trafficking task force, and adds certain co-sponsors.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 253 to Assembly Bill 143 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 160, introduced by Assemblyman Torres et al., an act relating to offenders authorizing a court to provide credit for time spent in residential confinement before conviction to reduce the sentence of imprisonment and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 193, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 193 to Assembly Bill 160.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved the Assembly adopt Amendment 193 to Assembly Bill 160. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 193 does three things. Number one, it requires a court to allow credit for time spent in confinement before conviction to reduce the sentence of imprisonment. Number two, it authorizes a court to allow credit for time spent in residential confinement before conviction to reduce the sentence of imprisonment. And number three, if a person is guilty of a misdemeanor, the court may order that credit be allowed against the sentence for the lesser of 25% of the amount of time the defendant spent in residential confinement before conviction, or 60 days under certain circumstances.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopted Amendment 193 to Assembly Bill 160 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 177, introduced by Assemblywoman Benitez, Thompson et al., Senators Doniate and Dennis, an act related to pharmacy, requiring certain pharmacies to provide information regarding a prescription in the language other than English under certain circumstances, requiring such pharmacies to post notice of the rights of a patient to request information in language other than English, providing immunity from civil liability to a pharmacy or employee for injuries resulting from the translation of such information by a third party under certain circumstances, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 101, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Assemblywoman Hodeggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Amendment 101 to Assembly Bill 177.
Assemblywoman Howdigis moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 101, Assembly Bill 177. Remarks?
The amendment replaces any language with languages to be identified by the State Board of Pharmacy based on demographic trends and projections. It also deletes Section 3B of Section 1 and corresponding language to eliminate any requirement other than information required to be included on a label be printed in a language other than English. It also deletes the provision that provides immunity from civil liability to a pharmacy or employee for injuries resulting from the translation of information by a third party that is not the result of negligence, recklessness, or deliberate misconduct of the pharmacy or employee.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 101, Assembly Bill 177, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further members of the bill?
There are none.
Bill's order general file.
Assembly Bill 186, introduced by Assemblyman Nguyen et al., an act relating to peace officers prohibiting a law enforcement agency from requiring a peace officer to issue a certain number of traffic citations or make a certain number of arrests, or prohibiting a law enforcement agency from considering the number of citations issued or arrests made by a peace officer or the amount of fines or fees assessed from these citations or arrests, and evaluating the performance of the peace officer and providing other measures properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
Are the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 254, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs.
Assemblyman Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 254 to Assembly Bill 186.
Assemblyman Flores moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 254 to Assembly Bill 186. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment removes the word suggest, thereby allowing a law enforcement agency to suggest that a peace officer issue a certain number of traffic citations or make a certain number of arrests.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 254 to Assembly Bill 186, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bill's order general file.
Assembly Bill 190, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to employment and requiring private employers to provide employees with sick leave to allow an employee to use such leave to assist a member of the employee's immediate family with certain medical needs, providing a penalty and providing other measures properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
Are the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
Amendment 102, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Assemblywoman Howdigis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Amendment 102 to Assembly Bill 190.
Assemblywoman Howdigis moved the Assembly adopt Amendment 102 to Assembly Bill 190. Remarks?
The amendment excludes parties to collective bargaining agreements from the provisions of the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 102 to Assembly Bill 190, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bill's order general file.
Assembly Bill 212, introduced by Assemblyman Anderson et al., an act relating to interpreters, advising and expanding the membership of the committee to advise the court administrator regarding adoption of regulations relating to the certification or registration of court interpreters for certain persons, requiring the committee to submit an annual report to the Chief Justice of the Nevada Supreme Court and make the report available to the public and providing other measures properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, end of bill.
On the amendments to the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 89, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 89 to Assembly Bill 212.
Assemblyman Yeager moved the Assembly adopt Amendment 89 to Assembly Bill 212. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 89 requires the committee to advise the court administrator regarding regulations for court interpreters to submit an annual report to the Nevada Legislature, and the amendment also stipulates the contents of the annual report.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 89 to Assembly Bill 212, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bill's order general file.
Assembly Bill 230, introduced by Assemblyman C.H. Miller et al., Senators Orenshaw et al., an act relating to juvenile justice, eliminating the exclusion of certain offenses from the jurisdiction of the juvenile court, revising provisions relating to the certification of a child for criminal proceedings as an adult, and providing other measures properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 8, end of Section 8, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 143, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 143 to Assembly Bill 230.
Assemblyman Yeager moved the Assembly adopt Amendment 143 to Assembly Bill 230. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 143 does four things. Number one, it deletes sections 1, 3, 5, 6, and 7 of the bill. Number two, it retains language in Section 2 regarding the jurisdiction of the juvenile court. Number three, it requires the Legislative Commission on Child Welfare and Juvenile Justice to conduct a study concerning the infrastructure needs and costs associated with housing youth awaiting a juvenile certification proceeding. And finally, number four, it adds co-sponsors to the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 143 to Assembly Bill 230, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 237, introduced by Assemblywoman Howdigy, an act relating to real property prohibiting a unit owners association for a common interest community from charging or collecting any fee, fine, assessment, or cost other than those that the association is expressly authorized or required by statute to charge or collect, revising provisions pertaining to the applicability of certain provisions of law governing the creation, alteration, and termination of common interest communities, increasing the cost of a demand or intent to lien letter, revising provisions relating to the exemption from providing certain information in the case of certain dispositions of a unit in a common interest community, requiring certain notice to be provided for a foreclosure sale, revising provisions relating to the sale of real property consisting of several lots or parcels, revising provisions regarding the ascertainment of title of real property to be partitions, making certain technical changes and removing certain obsolete provisions, revising provisions concerning instruments that subordinate or waive priority of a mortgage or deed of trust of, lien upon, or interest in real property, revising provisions relating to certain liens on real property and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people's state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 17, end of Section 17, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have Amendment 91, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 91 to Assembly Bill 237.
Assemblyman Yeager's moved. The Assembly adopt Amendment 91 to Assembly Bill 237. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment deletes Sections 1 and 3 of the bill. It establishes a process for the Commission for Common Interest Communities and Condominium Hotels to investigate complaints alleging violations of the fee provisions. It authorizes a commission to impose a fine in the amount of $250 on any association for any fee violations by the association. It prohibits an association or related entity from requiring any additional fees not specifically authorized or required by statute. And finally, the amendment provides that certain fees may increase on an annual basis in accordance with the Consumer Price Index, but no more than 3% per year.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 91 to Assembly Bill 237 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 241, introduced by Assemblywoman Gonzalez, an act relating to offenders establishing a credit against the sentence of certain offenders incarcerated during a state of emergency declared due to a communicable or infectious disease, and providing other matters properly in thereto. The people's state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
Amendment 92, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 92 to Assembly Bill 241.
Assemblyman Yeager's moved. The Assembly adopt Amendment 92 to Assembly Bill 241. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 92 adds the Department of Sentencing Policy as one of the entities to receive the report prepared by the Director of the Department of Corrections.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 92 to Assembly Bill 241 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 247, introduced by Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson, an act relating to education, updating the signatories to the Western Regional Education Compact, changing the name of the Office of the Western Regional Education Compact to the Nevada Office of the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education, revising provisions relating to the powers and duties of the Nevada State Commissioners, and the Nevada Office, revising provisions relating to financial support received by the participants enrolled in programs under the terms of the compact, revising provisions relating to certain accounts administered by the Nevada Office and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people's state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 29, end of Section 29, end of bill.
Amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have Amendment 98, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Education.
Assemblywoman Bill Axel out.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 98 to Assembly Bill 247.
Assemblywoman Bill Axel has moved. The Assembly adopt Amendment 98 to Assembly Bill 247. Remarks?
Amendment 98 does the following. It updates the compact to include United States Pacific Territories and freely associated states, and it updates the number of members. It also provides additional clarifying language.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 98 to Assembly Bill 247 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 250, introduced by Assemblywoman Howdigy and Hardy, an act relating to insurance requiring the establishment of an open enrollment period for a policy of insurance which provides for the payment of certain expenses which are not covered by Medicare, prohibiting an insurer issuing such a policy from taking certain actions during the open enrollment period, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people's state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 6, end of Section 6, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 126, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Assemblywoman Howdigy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Amendment 126 to Assembly Bill 250.
Assemblywoman Howdy has moved. The Assembly adopt Amendment 126 to Assembly Bill 250. Remarks?
The amendment specifies that the policies of insurance that provide the payment of expenses which are not covered by Medicare in the bill must be a Medicare supplemental policy as defined in 42 CFR 403.205, and a person may, during his or her open enrollment period, purchase a Medicare supplemental policy made available by any insurer with the same or lesser benefits. A Medicare supplemental policy also includes a plan offered by the public entities that otherwise meet the requirements of 42 CFR 403.205. It also changes the effective date and adds a co-sponsor.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 126 to Assembly Bill 250 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 261, introduced by Assemblywoman Anderson, et al., Senator Harris, an act relating to education requiring the Board of Trustees of a school district or the governing body of a charter school to ensure that instruction is provided to certain pupils on the history and contributions of certain groups of persons, revising provisions relating to the selection of instructional materials by the State Board of Education, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
Any members of Section 1 will go as a whole.
I have Amendment 252, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Education.
Assemblywoman Bilber Axelrod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 252 to Assembly Bill 261.
Assemblywoman Bilber Axelrod moved. The Assembly adopted Amendment 252 to Assembly Bill 261. Remarks?
Amendment 252 to Assembly Bill 261 adds joint sponsors to the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 252 to Assembly Bill 261 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 273, introduced by Assemblyman Gorlow et al., an act relating to mental health, creating a statewide mental health consortium, prescribing the membership powers and duties of the statewide mental health consortium, authorizing each mental health consortium to request a drafting of not more than one legislative measure for each regular session of the legislature, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 7, end of Section 7, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 132, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services.
Assemblywoman Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 132 to Assembly Bill 273.
Assemblywoman Nguyen's moved. The Assembly adopt Amendment 132 to Assembly Bill 273. Remarks?
Amendment 132 authorizes the administrator of the Division of Family and Child Services to designate an alternative who is an employee of the division or another person to attend any consortium meeting at his or her place.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 132 to Assembly Bill 273 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 284, introduced by Assemblywoman Martinez, an act relating to statutory liens, providing a procedure to contest the validity of a lien on a motor vehicle, requiring that certain information be provided in a notice of lien on a motor vehicle, providing for the expiration of a lien on a motor vehicle, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 5, end of Section 5, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 144, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 144 to Assembly Bill 284.
Assemblyman Yeager's moved. The Assembly adopt Amendment 144 to Assembly Bill 284. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 144 excludes tow cars holding a certificate of public convenience, and it also clarifies that the days are calendar days in the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 144 to Assembly Bill 284 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 319, introduced by Assemblyman Robertson Howdy, an act relating to education, requiring the College of Southern Nevada to establish a pilot program to enhance opportunities for pupils to enroll in dual credit courses, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 5, end of Section 5, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 307, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Education.
Assemblywoman Bilber Axelrod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 307 to AB 319.
Assemblywoman Bilber Axelrod has moved. The Assembly adopt Amendment 307 to Assembly Bill 319. Remarks?
Amendment 307 adds primary co-sponsors to the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 307 to Assembly Bill 319 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 325, introduced by Assemblyman Kasama et al., Senators Buck et al., and act related to records, authorizing the submission of a certified paper copy of an electronic document to certain county recorders prescribing a certificate sufficient for certifying that a paper copy is a true and correct copy of an electronic document and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people stated that are represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
On the amendment to Section 1 of the bill as a whole,
I have Amendment 297 proposed by the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs.
Amendment Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 297 to Assembly Bill 325.
Amendment Flores is moved. The Assembly adopt Amendment 297 to Assembly Bill 325. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment deletes Section 3 of the bill, adds provisions regarding to certification of electronic documents to the Electronic Notarization Enabling Act, and changes the effective date to July 1st, 2021.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 297 to Assembly Bill 325 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further members to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 338, introduced by Assemblyman Orrin Licker. An act relating to governmental financial administration, revising the conditions under which certain public money may be invested in certain foreign bonds, notes, or other obligations, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 5, end of Section 5, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole,
There are none.
bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 344, introduced by the Assemblywoman Women Thomas and Krasner, an act related to public welfare authorizing the establishment of a program to facilitate the transition of older persons and vulnerable persons being discharged from a hospital and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole,
I have Amendment 156, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services.
Assemblywoman Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 156 to Assembly Bill 344.
Assemblywoman Wynn's moved. The Assembly adopt Amendment 156 to Assembly Bill 344. Remarks?
Amendment 156 changes the term vulnerable person to person with a disability throughout the bill. It also defines person with a disability to include a person with a physical disability, a person with certain related conditions, and a person with an intellectual disability. It also clarifies that the division may fund the program, billing third parties for the services provided by the program to persons currently covered by the third parties, and it adds a co-sponsor to the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 156 to Assembly Bill 344 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 351, introduced by Assemblyman Flores, an act related to public health, revising provisions concerning medical certificates of death relating to a person who self-administers a medication that is designed to end his or her life, authorizing a physician to prescribe a medication that is designed to end the life of a patient under certain circumstances, prohibiting persons other than a patient from administering a medication that is designed to end the life of the patient, imposing requirements on certain providers of healthcare and healthcare facilities relating to the record of the patient who requests a medication that is designed to end his or her life, providing immunity to certain providers of healthcare and healthcare facilities to take certain actions relating to prescribing or dispensing a medication that is designed to end the life of the patient, prohibiting certain fraudulent, deceptive, or coercive acts relating to prescribing or dispensing a medication that is designed to end the life of the patient, authorizing the owner or operator of a healthcare facility to prohibit certain persons from providing certain services relating to a medication that is designed to end the life of a patient, prohibiting a person from conditioning provisions of a will, contract, agreement, or policy of life insurance on the request for or acquisition or administration of a medication that is designed to end the life of a person, prohibiting a person from refusing to sell or provide life insurance or denying benefits to or imposing additional charges against a policyholder or beneficiary because the insured requested or revoked a request for a medication that is designed to end the life of a person, providing penalties, and providing other measures properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 46, end of Section 46, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 357, introduced by Assemblyman Frierson, an act relating to consumer protection, creating the Consumer Protection Legal Fund in the Office of the Attorney General, and prescribing the use of the money in the fund, creating the Consumer Protection Administrative Fund in the Bureau of Consumer Protection within the Office of the Attorney General, and prescribing the use of money in the fund, revising provisions relating to the distribution of money received from certain settlements and litigation, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 7, end of Section 7, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Bills ordered general fund.
Assembly Bill 362, introduced by Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson, an act relating to education requiring the Board of Trustees of the College Savings Funds of Nevada to adopt a policy relating to certain excess money in the Nevada Higher Education Prepaid Tuition Trust Fund, revising provisions governing the use of money in the trust fund and providing other measures appropriately thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Bills ordered general fund.
Assembly Bill 365, introduced by Assemblyman Peters et al., an act relating to governmental administration, declaring the policy of the state that persons employed by the state be afforded respect, dignity, and equity in the workplace, requiring the departments of the state government to prepare and submit a report concerning equity in the workplace annually, requiring the administrator of the Division of Human Resource Management of the Department of Administration to evaluate annually the effectiveness of any policy intended to encourage equity in the workforce, and prepare and submit a report concerning the evaluation, requiring certain regulations adopted by the Personnel Commission of the Division to include requirements for the training of supervisors and managerial employees concerning implicit bias, and providing other matters appropriately thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 10, end of Section 10, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Bills ordered general fund.
Assembly Bill 393, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to criminal justice, requiring the Executive Director of the Department of Sentencing Policy to assist the Nevada Sentencing Commission in carrying out certain duties, revising provisions relating to certain reports prepared by the Commission, authorizing the Commission to adopt qualifications for members of the Nevada Local Justice Reinvestment Coordinating Council, revising provisions concerning reports of pre-sentence investigations, revising provisions relating to parolees and probationers, removing and replacing certain obsolete terminology, revising provisions concerning the embezzlement of a vehicle and certain marijuana-related offenses, repealing provisions relating to inquiries to determine probable cause when a probationer is in custody for a violation of a condition of probation, repealing provisions requiring the Chief Parole and Probation Officer of the Division of Parole and Probation of the Department of Public Safety to adopt standards to assist in formulating a recommendation concerning the granting of probation or the revocation of parole or probation, providing penalties, and providing other matters appropriately thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 36, end of Section 36, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 146, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 146 to Assembly Bill 393.
Assemblyman Yeager's moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 146 to Assembly Bill 393. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 146 makes some changes about reporting to the Nevada Department of Sentencing, and it also makes some changes to Assembly Bill 236 from the last legislative session.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 146, Assembly Bill 393, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendments adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general fund.
Assembly Bill 394, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to civil actions, providing that members of a mobile crisis response team are immune from civil liability under certain circumstances, and providing other matters properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
All right, amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
Amendment 196, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 196 to Assembly Bill 394.
Assemblyman Yeager's moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 196 to Assembly Bill 394. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 196 provides that a behavioral health specialist performing mobile crisis intervention services by telephone or audio-video communication is immune from any civil liability in the performance of mobile crisis intervention services under certain circumstances.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 196 to Assembly Bill 394 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendments adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general fund.
Assembly Bill 401, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to criminal justice, requiring the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice to appoint a subcommittee to conduct an interim study concerning the sealing or expungement of records of criminal history, and providing the matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
Amendment 147, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 147 to Assembly Bill 401.
Assemblyman Yeager's moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 147 to Assembly Bill 401. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 147 revises the bill by directing the Legislative Commission to appoint an interim committee to study the sealing or expungement of criminal records instead of the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 147 to Assembly Bill 401 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendments adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 403, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary and Act relating to rules of the road, revising provisions relating to certain violations by pedestrians relating to crossing a highway and providing other measures properly lane thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 197, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 197 to Assembly Bill 403.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that Assembly adopt Amendment 197 to Assembly Bill 403. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 197 does three things. First, it changes the fee structure by allowing a civil penalty of up to $100. Two, it provides that the bill applies to persons who are alleged to have committed a jaywalking offense but have not been convicted of jaywalking before the effective date of the bill. And number three, it invalidates existing warrants for jaywalking.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 197 to Assembly Bill 403 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 437, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to decedents, authorizing a coroner to allow the transportation of human remains to a funeral establishment in an adjacent state under certain circumstances, revising the qualifications for a license to practice the profession of embalming and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 10, end of Section 10, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 312, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs.
Assemblyman Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 312 to Assembly Bill 437.
Assemblyman Flores has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 312 to Assembly Bill 437. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amongst other things, the amendment deletes sections 1 through 8 regarding the transportation of human remains.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 312 to Assembly Bill 437 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 71, introduced by the Committee on Natural Resources, an act relating to conservation, making certain information maintained by the Division of Natural Heritage of the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources confidential, authorizing the division to release such information under certain circumstances and to charge a fee for such a release and providing other measures properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 162, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Natural Resources.
Assemblyman Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Amendment 162 to Assembly Bill 71.
Assemblyman Watts moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 162 to Assembly Bill 71. Remarks?
Thank you. The amendment clarifies that the specific locations of certain plants and animals are considered confidential, that the use of the data has to be related to conservation, environmental review, education, land management, or scientific research or similar purpose to be disclosed, provides that private landowners where sensitive species or ecological communities occur are entitled to such information, removes the reasonable fee provision and instead references existing statute for public records, and adds federal candidate species to the definition of rare species.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 162 to Assembly Bill 71 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 88, introduced by Assemblyman Watts et al., an act relating to governmental entities requiring the Board of Trustees of a school district, governing body of a charter school, or governing body of a university school for profoundly gifted pupils to adopt a policy prohibiting the use of certain racially discriminatory identifiers, authorizing the Board of Trustees of a school district, governing body of a charter school, or governing body of a university school for profoundly gifted pupils to use an identifier associated with a federally recognized Indian tribe in certain circumstances, authorizing the Board of Regents of the University of Nevada to prohibit the use of certain racially discriminatory identifiers, requiring the Nevada State Board of Geographic Names to recommend changes to the names of geographic features or places that are racially discriminatory or named after certain persons, requiring the Board to report annually to the Legislature or the Legislative Commission as applicable on any recommendations and providing other measures properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 5, end of Section 5, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 40, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Education.
Assemblywoman Bilber Axelrod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to add Amendment 40 to Assembly Bill 88.
Assemblywoman Bilber Axelrod has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 40 to Assembly Bill 88. Remarks?
Amendment 40 to Assembly Bill 88 does the following. 1, it removes natural person with racially discriminatory history from Section 1 and Section 3 of the bill, deletes Section 2 relating to the Board of Regents, and 3, deletes subsection 2 of Section 4 of the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 40 to Assembly Bill 88 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general fund.
Assembly Bill 167, introduced by Assemblyman Levitt et al. An act relating to education requiring the Board of Trustees of a school district, the governing body of a charter school, a university, a state college, or a community college to include certain information on an identification card issued to a pupil or student as applicable and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 39, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Education.
Assemblywoman Bilber Axelrod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 39 to Assembly Bill 167.
Assemblywoman Bilber Axelrod has moved that Assembly adopt Amendment 39 of Assembly Bill 167. Remarks?
Amendment 39 to Assembly Bill 167 does 5 things. 1, it revises requirements so that only applies to new IDs or reprinted IDs. 2, deletes the requirement that information must be provided on the back of the ID card. Number 3, deletes various mental health resource requirements and instead requires the contact information, including text messaging, be specific to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Number 4, provides information received by the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline may be shared with the Safe Voice program if it complies with current and future policies of Lifeline, and adds co-sponsors to the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 39 of Assembly Bill 167 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general fund.
Assembly Bill 188, introduced by the Committee on Growth and Infrastructure, an act relating to special license plates, abolishing the Commission on Special License Plates and transferring the duties and authorities of the Commission to the Department of Motor Vehicles, requiring the Department to hold public meetings and comply with certain notice requirements for such public meetings before approving or disapproving an application for the design, preparation, and issuance of a special license plate, requiring the Department to compile certain reports and submit such reports to the Director of the Legislative Council Bureau for transmission to the Legislature or Legislative Commission as applicable, requiring the Department to submit certain final written reports to the Legislative Auditor from the Legislative Auditor to the Legislature or Legislative Commission as applicable, transferring certain duties and authorities relating to certain actions concerning charitable organizations from the Commission to the Department, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 18, end of Section 18, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 127, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Growth and Infrastructure.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 127 to Assembly Bill 188.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno has moved that Assembly adopt Amendment 127 of Assembly Bill 188. Remarks?
The amendment makes the following changes to the bill. It requires that the legislative auditor compel and submit certain reports for charitable organizations that receive certain fees to the Department of Motor Vehicles and the Director of the Legislative Council Bureau for the transmission to the Legislature or Legislative Commission as applicable. As directed and introduced, the department compiled and submitted such information. It also changes the date the final written report with respect to these charitable organizations shall be submitted from January 31st to September 30th annually.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 127 of Assembly Bill 188 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general fund.
Assembly Bill 197, introduced by Assemblyman Watts et al., Senators Doniati and Dennis, an act relating to homelessness, revising requirements concerning the provision of health care to a minor without the consent of his or her parents or legal guardian in certain circumstances, revising provisions requiring the state registrar to provide certain certificates to a homeless person free of charge in certain circumstances, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 64, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services.
Assemblywoman Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 64 to Assembly Bill 197.
Assemblywoman Nguyen's moved that Assembly adopt Amendment 64 to Assembly Bill 197. Remarks?
The amendment replaces "in a physician's judgment" with "in the judgment of a provider of health care," and provides that a legal custodian of a minor is not responsible for certain treatment costs unless the custodian has consented to such treatment.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 64 to Assembly Bill 197 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 205, introduced by Assemblywoman Cohen et al., an act relating to controlled substances, authorizing certain healthcare professionals to issue an order for an opioid antagonist to a public or private school, authorizing public and private schools to obtain and maintain opioid antagonists under certain conditions, providing immunity to certain persons for acts or omissions relating to the acquisition, possession, provision, or administration of auto-injectable epinephrine or opioid antagonists in certain circumstances, and providing them as properly laid thereto. The people's state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 10, end of Section 10, end of bill.
Are any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
Amendment 154, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services.
Assemblywoman Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 154 to Assembly Bill 205.
Assemblywoman Wynn has moved that with Assembly adopt Amendment 154 to Assembly Bill 205. Remarks?
This amendment provides that liability exemptions for school district, employees of the school, and certain other persons affiliated with the school only apply if the provision or administration of the auto-injectable or opioid antagonist occurs during the rendering of emergency care or assistance.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 154 to Assembly Bill 205 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 215, introduced by Assemblyman Considine et al., an act relating to education requiring the Department of Education to adopt regulations relating to the eligibility of certain persons to enroll in courses for an adult to earn a high school diploma and providing other measures properly named thereto. The people's state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
Are the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 97, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Education.
Assemblywoman Bilber Axelrod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 97 to Assembly Bill 215.
Assemblywoman Bilber Axelrod has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 97 to Assembly Bill 215. Remarks?
Amendment 97 to Assembly Bill 215 replaces the term completed with attended in Section 1, subsection 2.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 97 to Assembly Bill 215 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 228, introduced by Assemblywoman Brittany Miller et al., an act related to child welfare, prescribing the requirements governing the credentialing and operation of children's advocacy centers, providing for certain persons are immune from civil liability for actions or omissions in duties performed on behalf of or through a children's advocacy center, requiring the governing body of each county and each agency which provides child welfare services to ensure access to the children's advocacy center, creating an account to support children's advocacy centers, and providing other rules properly thereto. The people's state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 10, end of Section 10, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
Amendment 67, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services.
Assemblywoman Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 67 to Assembly Bill 228.
Assemblywoman Wynn moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 67 to Assembly Bill 228. Remarks?
The amendment provides that a children's advocacy center must operate in accordance with the standards prescribed by the National Children's Alliance to the extent that those standards do not conflict with federal or state law. It also clarifies that children have access to all services provided by a children's advocacy center, and provides that a member of the children's advocacy center's multidisciplinary team is only immune from civil liability for any communications within the team, and ensures that all child welfare information can be shared with every member of the multidisciplinary team within the center.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 67 to Assembly Bill 228 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file. We'll go now to Order Business 12. Order Business 8, I believe. Assemblywoman Colton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So sharpen your pencils. Here we go. I would move that Assembly Bill 37, 125, 131, 167, 188, 230, 241, 247, 273, 319, 351, 357, 365, 393, and 401, currently on second reading, be referred to your Committee on Ways and Means.
You heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll go back to Order Business 12.
Assembly Bill 4, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to insurance, revising provisions governing the authority and duties of the Nevada Insurance Guarantee Association, the Board of Directors of the Association, and the Commissioner of Insurance, revising provisions governing claims against and actions and proceedings involving insolvent insurers, and the Association, revising provisions governing the plan of operation of the Association and subrogation and recovery by the Association, revising the immunity from liability for certain persons with regard to activities relating to the Association and insolvent insurers, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 18, end of Section 18, end of bill.
Are there members of Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks? On AB4, Assemblywoman Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 4 makes various changes concerning the Nevada Insurance Guarantee Association. Among other things, the bill limits the claims that may be asserted against a person insured by a policy issued by an insolvent insurer, adds various types of insurance products designed to protect the interest of a creditor arising out of a creditor-debtor transaction to the type of insurance that are not covered by the Guarantee Association, and describes certain coverage under warranties and service contracts that are not covered by the Guarantee Association, amends the types of claims that are covered by the Guarantee Association, extends the claim filing deadline from 18 months to 25 months, and lowers the net worth threshold for first-party claims, which are claims made by insureds, to $10 million, and changes the amount of the Guarantee Association's obligation to pay a covered claim by reducing the limit to $10,000 for each policy if the claim is for the return of unearned premiums, and clarifies that the Guarantee Association is not bound by unfunded settlements or releases that were executed or entered within 12 months before an order of liquidation.
Any further remarks? There being none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 42 ayes, 0 nays. The bill having received the Constitutional majority, declare passed and order transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 6, introduced by the Committee on Natural Resources, an act relating to water, revising provisions governing an application for a temporary change relating to water already appropriated, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Are there members of Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks? Assemblywoman Brown-May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 6 relates to the diversion or use of water. This bill provides that a person may file a written protest against the granting of an application for a temporary change, and that the state engineer may hold a hearing in accordance with the procedures set forth in existing law.
Any further remarks? There being none, Chief Clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 42 ayes, 0 nays. We obviously the Constitutional majority, declare passed and order transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 18, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to insurance, revising provisions governing the renewal of a policy of insurance, revising provisions governing certain policies of motor vehicle liability insurance, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
On the members of Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
Remarks? Assemblywoman Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 18 eliminates the limitation on the maximum amount of uninsured vehicle coverage that may be provided by a motor vehicle liability insurance policy. The bill provides that certain notice requirements do not apply to a policy upon renewal if the changes to the policy's provisions are favorable to the policyholder.
Any further remarks? There being none, Chief Clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 42 ayes, 0 nays. The bill having received the Constitutional majority, declare passed and order transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 19, introduced by the Committee on Education, an act relating to education, revising the academic subjects that constitute school studies, social studies, exempting standards of content and performance for courses of study in public schools that from certain requirements governing the adoption of regulations, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 6, end of Section 6, end of bill.
All right, members of Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
Remarks? Assemblywoman Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 19 changes what constitutes the academic subject social studies by removing government and including instead civics, financial literacy, and multicultural education. The bill also exempts from procedural requirements for regulation, making under the Nevada Administrative Procedure Act the adoption, amendment, or repeal of standards of content and performance for courses of study in public schools by the Council to establish academic standards for public schools and the State Board of Ed. The bill requires that all regulations establishing standards of content and performance for courses of study in public schools be removed from the Nevada Administrative Code.
Any further remarks? Assemblywoman Hanson.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order of Business 15.
Order Business 15.
I rise in opposition to AB 19. There has been a lot of debate about why AB 19 is needed and why homeschoolers are not being excluded by amendment. And the reasons offered include conforming language, precedent, and core standards. What AB 19 really is overreach on homeschooling families, which violates their autonomy, which was the result of the Homeschool Freedom Bill, which unanimously passed in 2007. During the hearings for AB 19 and the thousands of emails and online opinions we have all received since that hearing, an amendment to exclude homeschoolers has been asked for and refused. We have heard that 2015, a conforming change was made that included homeschoolers. It was just a terminology change in name of a core subject from English to English language arts, not a creation of a subset of core subjects. 2017, another conforming change was made, but did not include homeschoolers. The current designated core subjects are English language arts, mathematics, science, social studies, history, geography, economics, and government. I would argue, and experience has shown me, that the proposed language of AB 19 is already taught within the current core standards of social studies, economics, and government by homeschoolers. I agree core standards are important, so important that perhaps we should be asking and examining why under current core standards, according to the NDE portal, 2018 and 19, for 3rd to 8th graders, math proficiency rates were 38%, reading proficiency rates were 49%, high school reading proficiency rates were 48%, and math proficiency rates were 26%. It seems to me that homeschoolers and their proficiency of a new subset of core standards is not the issue needing this legislative fix in AB 19. I urge my colleagues to vote no on AB 19 as currently written. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Tolles.
Okay, it's going around. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Order Business 15?
Order Business 15.
Thank you. I rise in support of AB 19, and I want to say that I struggled with this bill for the same reasons that my colleague from Assembly District 32 just listed in terms of I do support the autonomy of homeschoolers, and I believe they should have been included in the process. But I also strongly support civics, financial literacy, and multicultural education, and this body overwhelmingly supported legislation in 2015 and 2017 to include each of those subjects in social studies content standards. AB 19 places those conforming standards in public, private, charter, and homeschools. I did ask for homeschoolers to be amended out of this bill based on those concerns raised, but learned that this could create an inconsistent and bifurcated system with potentially negative impacts on students as they progress through the education system in the future. I am reassured to know that NRS 388D.050 protects the autonomy of a parent's right to prepare an educational plan of instruction as appropriate for the age and level of the child, as determined by the parent, and does not require that each subject area is taught each year that the child is homeschooled. Under our current NRS statutes, homeschool parents still have autonomy on what curriculum they choose and how and when they teach it. This bill does not change that. I will be voting yes today, but I urge the Department of Education and our colleagues in the Senate side to continue to work with the homeschool community on their concerns. Civics, financial literacy, and multicultural education are foundational building blocks to prepare our students to enter the world as well-informed global citizens and contributors to the economy. And so for those reasons, I support AB 19. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no further remarks, Chief Clerk will open the room. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 28 ayes, 14 nays. Bill having received the Constitutional majority, declare passed. Order transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 31, introduced by the Committee on Natural Resources, an act relating to substances regulated by the State Department of Agriculture, requiring the State Board of Agriculture to adopt standards for diesel exhaust fluid, prohibiting certain commercial activities relating to diesel exhaust fluid in certain circumstances, transferring the duty to adopt standards for aviation fuel from the State Sealer of Consumer Equitability to the Board, requiring the Board to adopt standards for petroleum heating products not including liquefied petroleum gas and natural gas, revising provisions relating to the storage and disposal of petroleum products, eliminating certain powers and duties of the State Controller of Consumer Equitability relating to petroleum products, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people's state or data represented in Senate and Assembly do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 16, end of Section 16, end of bill.
Any members of Section 1 of the bill to hold?
There are none.
Remarks, Assemblyman Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 31 revises provisions governing the Nevada Petroleum Products Inspection Act. Specifically, the bill requires the State Board of Agriculture of the State Department of Agriculture to adopt specification standards for aviation fuel, diesel exhaust fluid, and certain petroleum heating products. It makes it unlawful for any person to refuse to permit the State Sealer of Consumer Equitability or the appointments thereof, or any member of the Nevada Highway Patrol to perform their duties concerning petroleum products or motor vehicle fuel sampling. Allows by mutual agreement for the waiver of 24-hour notice period before an outlet or tank, which has been sealed, to be unsealed for purposes of removal or fuel or other products found to be in violation. Revises provisions relating to the storage and disposal of petroleum products. Makes other technical and conforming changes.
Any further remarks? There being none, Chief Clerk will open the room. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 42 ayes, 0 nays. Bill have received the Constitutional majority, declare passed, and order transmitted to Senate.
Assembly Bill 34, introduced by the Committee on Natural Resources, an act relating to pest control, defining the term control as it applies to the control of noxious weeds by the owner or operator of land, authorizing the Director of the State Department of Agriculture to adopt regulations that establish and administer a program to certify certain agricultural products as being free from propagative parts from which noxious weeds may grow, authorizing certain notices to be delivered by electronic mail, exempting certain businesses that sell nursery stock only to the public exclusively via the internet from certain licensure requirements, revising the prohibition against engaging in certain activities involving pest control without a license, revising provisions governing the certification of persons to apply or supervise the application of restricted use pesticides, and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people's state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 26, end of Section 26, end of bill.
All right, members of Section 1 of the bill to hold.
There are none.
Remarks? I don't have anybody lit up. Anyone have remarks? You don't have to. All right, there being no remarks, Chief Clerk, open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 29 ayes, 13 nays. Bill have received the Constitutional majority, declare passed, and order transmitted to Senate.
Assembly Bill 412, introduced by the Committee on Growth and Infrastructure, an act related to motor vehicles, revising provisions governing fully autonomous vehicles and providing other matters properly laid thereto. The people's state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 5, end of Section 5, end of bill.
All right, members of Section 1 of the bill to hold.
There are none.
Remarks? Assemblyman Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 412 provides that a neighborhood occupantless vehicle is defined in this bill as in compliance with state law if the operator, number one, complies with certain speed restrictions and equipment restrictions for the vehicles, and number two, operates the vehicle on roadways with a speed limits greater than 35 miles per hour, but less than 45 miles per hour. The measure provides that fully autonomous vehicle that is exclusively operated by autonomous driving system is exempted from certain requirements for equipment. Thank you.
Any further remarks? There being none, Chief Clerk, open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 40 ayes, 2 nays. Bill having received the constitutional majority declared passed. Order transmitted to the Senate. We can now go to order of business 15. Assemblywoman Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order of Business 15.
Order of business 15.
I think my daughter is watching because she just finished up her SBAC testing this week. But I did want to wish her a happy 9th birthday today to my beautiful, funny, and sarcastic 9-year-old.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
All right, that was quick. Seeing no other business before us, Mr. Speaker, I'd move that the Assembly adjourn until Thursday, April the 15th at the hour of 11:30 a.m.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.